consciousness across the planet. We're going to also discuss UFO prophecy, Earth's ascension timeline. We're in a 40-day window now, and the celestial signs appearing all across our skies. So myself, if everybody recalls, I'm a Reiki Master, and Gene has an incredible rare fusion, nearly 4 decades of martial arts, 20 years serving on U.S. Navy submarines, and as a Sensei, martial arts with advanced remote viewing capabilities. If everybody recalls, 2 shows ago, Gene and I discussed his near-death experience, the NDE, and meeting our all-time prime creator, the great omnipresence of divinity, God source. So this conversation really is going to deliver what I take profound spiritual wisdom and sharp, battle-tested discernment of a modern spiritual warrior on what we see happening around us now and what's to come. Gene, welcome back to the show, sir.
Quite an introduction, Brad. Thank you for having me back.
Mahalo, sir, mahalo, and welcome back. And here we are, the Tuesday right after Easter Monday, and the exact day of the resurrection, AD 33, Sunday, April 5th then. And we just had that Sunday, April 5th now. The alignment is truly remarkable, and as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. And that's the times we're in. We're in a time of amazing alignments.
Definitely, most definitely. What is it you guys are picking up from your end and Blessed for Service? Just posting the link right to genedecode.org and your Blessed for Service team into the chat right now so everybody can follow that. And remember, everyone, below the description of the show, whether you're watching this broadcast later on or listening to the podcast, you will find the links directly to Gene and all of his incredible information. Excellent. So, Gene, what are you seeing now coming up from let's talk about the Ascension time frame, the 40 days. There's always these unique perspectives of 40 days, 40 nights, the time that Christ fasted, received his spiritual authority, 40 days, 40 nights, Noah's Ark, the rain, whatnot. And now we're in an Ascension timeline of sorts. But rather than the audience here from me, how would you frame it for them and what's going on right now?
Well, amazingly, our timing is beyond belief. If I'm doing my math correctly, May 17th, Trump is having a rededication of this country, the United States, for these United States for America, to rededicate ourselves and the country as a Christian nation to God. And that, if I'm doing my math, the day being the 7th, April having 30 days, 17 plus 23, that's 40. It's 40 days from now. And then that's a very special event. And then after May 17th, from there, we go, 24 days to the end of May. And then we've got 30 days of June, which is 54, and the 4th of July is 58 days. So that has some meaning too if people know their numbers.
Wow, yeah, the rededication happens as well on the 250th anniversary of George Washington calling May 17th in 1776 the Day of Repentance out of Washington then. It's freaking remarkable.
Yes, absolutely. It's rededicating ourselves to this republic.
Yeah.
Under God, one nation under God for the people, of the people, by the people. It said he gives the country back to us. We are getting our republic back. That is essentially a done deal. With his name, the first city president ever to be going on the money, and the Fed being underneath the Treasury.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump is meaning that he's in charge of the Treasury. And France, Macron, getting quite a few millions. I don't remember the precise number. Let me see if I can pull it up here just a second. Of money back to France. He sold a lot of gold.
Yeah, they sold it in New York and they bought it on the European exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Even made $15 billion profit 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 129 tons of French gold stored in New York and brought an equivalent amount of gold in Europe. So whatever 120, that's billions of dollars.
Yeah.
It may be more than that. I don't know like the going rate of gold per ounce and how many troy ounces are in a ton. So it takes a bit of math. I can't do that one in my head. So people out there can do that with search engines. So if you look at that, he's ditching the Fed money because they know the Fed is going down and IRS is not long to follow. And we'll be out from under the beast system and the fiat currencies will go away and they'll collapse. Well, already the new system is in effect. They're inventorying all of the straw men of everybody in the country. And I believe England and New Zealand and are similarly have straw men for when you're born and you get a birth certificate, which is your certificate of birth. It's like a ship coming. It's all done by Admiralty law. That's why a British Admiralty, rule and regulations, the bar.
You're talking about in. Keep going, sir. Keep going for this for a while. People love to know this stuff, and it's one of the top shows I've ever done is on sovereignty, admiral law, the straw man, showing them fidelity in the U.S. and Manulife Financial in Canada, and the fact that any Canadian registered under Vital Statistics Canada and gets a social insurance, a SIN number, then is registered in Washington, D.C. and falls under the American Corporation, where the Crown Corporation of Canada is headquartered on Pennsylvania Avenue at the Canadian Embassy, which was established July 1, 1867. I'm going to mute myself so people get to hear this directly from Eugene for these next few minutes.
And that it's social insurance is the same way they do it in the UK. I'm not sure how they do it in New Zealand and Australia, but it's very similar. And so by the time you're 50, your straw man is about $1 billion on the stock market. It's traded. And by the time you're in your 70s and you've retired, it's 10 billion or more. So, you want is this once the Nassar Jassar rolls out, and let's say you're 50 years old and you want a humanitarian project, they're not going to grant you money. They're going to give you your money. You won't need a grant. $1 billion? That's a serious project you could get if you're in your 70s. 10 billion or more, and it varies per person. And so, for example, when you buy a home, the bank goes to your straw man and loans you your money and pays you. You have to pay interest on the loan on your own money. This was done under FDR, the birth certificate thing, which is. Like when you go to court, you step into the dead man box, they shut the gate behind you, you're a dead man because the ship is no longer at sea, you've been taken out, and the judge gets paid from your straw man. So these judges, they've got to know this stuff. They've got to have known this a long time. And the job is to see, what violations and fine you as a ship, corporation. And so what violations of the high seas you've done. So like when you're born, you come out of the water and you get your certificate, your parents sign you into slavery. And then you're traded and everything you make is adding into that. And here it's actually all yours in the first place. So it's just ridiculous. And then the currency that you're paid, that's the current of the ocean that you're in as a corporation at sea. And so, I mean, this all ties together, and this is all coming down. So the Jasara and the Sara, they're as people will be getting this return of their values for their straw man, they won't need to work unless they like to work. And then you can work, and you don't have to work to struggle to make a living. You don't have to make a living. You have a living. You are created by God to have a comfortable life and a living. And so, one thing I realized I got correct some information that I've misunderstood something for quite a while regarding Jasara and Asara. The quantum financial system, all of the economic tools, whether it's currency, money, bills, whatever, gold, silver coin, that are minted in the United States underneath the U.S. Treasury, as per the Act of Congress, Article 1, Section 8, then all of that, it's not blockchain. And it's not, none of the information is held in any computer system on Earth. It's, why do you think Artemis is, what do you think it's doing? Why is it so timed right now? Because what they're doing is this ties to the quantum system, setting it up so it's not in some computer at MIT, like the net, the internet, the main system is at MIT. Aaron Swartz hacked that system and got like everything, all the Epstein stuff, everything else. So he was what they call the internet boy, the internet's boy. And so they had alarms all over the world for that. Because, it's their whole financial system. And if people remember when I did a thing when Trump went to and reviewed the troops, and then the Queen waved him in front of him. Then he went to Westminster Abbey and he signed a huge book. That's the ledger for the Crown Corporation, which he then became the CEO. He took over the corporation of the City of London and the entire British massive empire that's still in effect. So now all of this is coming down, and he's giving people their countries back. And just like in Iran, just like he did in Cuba, we didn't go in and change the regime. It's not a forever war in Iran. It's to stop a war that was written to have happened by Albert Pike in Morals and Dogma to create the Third World War that would create the New World Order, the final war, the Gog Magog, Armageddon, whatever, between the Christian and Jewish nations and the Islamic nations, the Muslim nations. And so that's not what's happening. You can tell that's not what's happening because, yes, we have troops in the ground, and we had them from the get-go in there, but Iran is striking other Muslim countries. They struck United Arab Emirates. They struck Saudi Arabia. They struck Quran. About the majority of Islamic countries in that part of the world, they've launched drones and missiles into. That isn't the plan. That's not what Albert Pike and all of the new rules-based order neocon globalists wanted. So this is getting rid of that. And like Trump said, you cannot have a terrorist state, the terrorist state on earth. The billions of dollars that Biden, over $6 billion, he didn't send pallets like over $1 billion like Obama did, but still it's billions of dollars, and the uranium one that went missing, that was their nuclear stockpile to start building and then enriching their own, plus the Soviets when they disarmed and they fell. Those missiles were encased in lead, so when the non-terrestrials disarmed all of the world in 1990, well, Soviet Union fell a year later. They'd already started rebuilding, encased them in lead, and so they can't be found again was their hope. So they have nuclear missiles from that time, plus they're they were one step away from having their own. You can't have a country that is holding the entire Middle East hostage and has the ability to develop ballistic missiles. Already they were striking Diego Garcia. They have the ability to strike most all of Europe, including the UK and England. And it wouldn't have been long before they would have had a missile that could go anywhere on Earth. So it just cannot be allowed. And it's part of removing all of these countries that the deep state installed through color revolutions, their own proxy countries, governments. They went in and completely removed everybody. That's what they do, like they did in Iraq. They removed everybody. Well, Trump wasn't going to do that, but they kept, the mullahs and all that kept going and going and going, and they're still going to give it back to the people. That's not what, the oil companies did on Iraq. They never came back. And the same thing in Afghanistan. That was just, opium harvest. And so, the special forces there were protecting the opium. It was ridiculous. So this is all coming to an end now. And so what we see, now Cuba has said they're going to come and deal with Trump. And in other words, submit to him because they have no oil coming in. They have no power. They're without electricity, most everywhere. There's a few places that have generators and things like that. And so what you see is that regime, which was doing such a good job at protecting the girl, is not going to withstand anything, obviously, from that show. So they said, okay, we can't withstand the U.S. military's might and the technologies they have, the super soldier stuff, and the discombobulator and all of that stuff. So what we see is an amazing time. With the resurrection time of Christ, we're seeing the resurrection of the Republic. We're seeing the resurrection of free and fair trade, free countries with fair trade. I meant to say free countries getting their countries back. Iran will be given their country back. Cuba will be given their country back. They'll be wealthy beyond belief. I mean, just tourists, let alone how you've got year-round rolling capability there and all kinds of things. And so that had to be taken out. That has to be taken out too. And they will go country by country. China is already in turmoil. Most people don't get the news from out of there. I do have some. And so there are now 10 provinces in rebellion, and the CCP cannot put it down. It's just like we see in Iran with people, they're killing tens of thousands of people, and they're still standing up against them. And so this is the nature of when people realize that their freedom, if they fight for their freedom, then you will get your freedom. And it's not just fight by arms, but fight in your mind, in your prayers, in your envisioning. Envision it as done now, not as it will be done. It is done. We are free, we are sovereign, and we are sovereign men and women. You don't want to call yourself a person because that's part of the Admiralty thing again. And so I'm looking forward to seeing our flag coming back without Admiralty fringe around it and all of these things. So back to you, Brad.
Well, Gene, absolutely impressed at the scope and breadth and depth of your knowledge and how you can weave it together in this tapestry of conversation for people to follow through and go from biblical, geopolitical, wartime directly into the breakout of sovereignty versus admiralty law, sovereignty being the divine natural law of mankind, man and woman, divine feminine, divine masculine, versus the corporate chattel where they've been trading all of us around the world for generations on their stock exchanges with Social Security and social insurance numbers brought in 1934 in the Gold Reserve Act when they threatened you with a gun and said to the American people, you know what, you face $10,000 fine and up to 10 years in prison unless you bring in all of your gold in your home right now during the Dirty 30s Depression, 1933. And when you bring it all in, we're going to give you something called a greenback, and we're going to pay you a fair exchange, but it's all done under an executive order. And if you don't do this, like we just saw 6 years ago, no job, no jab, take the shot, you go to jail. And we had people go to jail if we're not taking the shot, and all around the world too. The consequences are nearly dire if you don't stand up. So the knowledge and applying it, everybody, what you just heard here is extremely powerful. And the fact that, there were a few things we mentioned. You mentioned on the last show when we were talking about pyramids of Giza, you said there are a billion robots underneath that. Just a few weeks later, Elon's pumping out the Optimus robot. First Lady of the United States, beautiful Melania, walks out with a different robot during the education session for children, right? And having representatives of other nations around the world, Gene. And then when you're talking about the making a living versus being the breathing, living man or woman upon the land in your nation and a return to the republic, I was very blessed to have about a 46 minute, and there's not even throwing puns at that, with the President of the United States 2 weeks ago, Mr. James Timothy Turner on the Republic side. And once again, they have not known the history because it hasn't been up there for us to find unless we go and research it, which is really simple to do at our fingertips. And again, article for the Canadians who are in the chat watching this later, they're loving this fact. You have the Alberta Independence Movement. I'm an Albertan, so that's wonderful to see, which is coming up on October 19th, the vote to be a sovereign state. But when you look at, once again, everybody, the first kingdom, and you take a look at the worldwide view of the 7 kingdoms of the known world, right, inside the ice walls, which we're all aware of, this is what I believe we're coming back to. And Gene, this is the next part of the conversation I'd like to pick up in as well. Now, I just had Juan O'Savin on the show last night, so we went a good hour and a half on a live stream, and Juan had called me on December 26, 2024, Boxing Day. For Canadians, everybody knows Boxing Day. And we had about an hour and 20-minute conversation, 90% his side, 10% mine. And he's been a white hat, if anybody doesn't know. He's been serving since the Reagan administration, right? Extremely well connected. And what Juan said in that conversation, which we reiterated a few months later when I had a roundtable of just myself, Juan, and Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi, right now, Australia One Party leader, right? Incredible man, whom I've always identified as the actual commander-in-chief of Australia and that empire and territory, which involves New Zealand, by the way, everybody, historically. What Juan had said to me that we said again then, he said, we will welcome, but these are word for word verbatim, we will welcome Canada back into America, we will buy Greenland, and we will take Australia and New Zealand. And when you look at the map, which President Trump has shown multiple times, and I'll put it up here on screen in a moment, right? He's put out in True Social, that represents the first kingdom out of the 7 kingdoms of the planet, and you have to establish that sovereign nation under Christ and our prime creator as well. And that's what I believe, Gene, is the next step over the next year or so of matriculating out, so that we have the Greenland, we have the other aspects of what's considered Canada, that fake 49th parallel boundary they drew a line in and whatnot, and then Australia and New Zealand coming on under the security and the protection of America, beyond something like we saw with the Shield of Americas, and of course under the Golden Dome protection, which you are the one who has brought to the world the celestial, divine, sentient being of what runs the Golden Dome and how the Creator created the Golden Dome and had it here for us millions of years ago. So that might be a lot for people to digest right now. And following up, and you can go back and watch these again and watch our episodes again. GeneDecode.org. Gene does deep dives several times on his channel with Blessed for Service team. But Gene, we're looking at First Kingdom and the Republic and moving forward in that standpoint, and the fact that President Trump, the Treasury's already announced it. I read the press release 2 weeks ago, Sunday, to everybody. Treasury.gov, brand new American currency, gold. Well, it doesn't say gold on the Treasury press release, but we know it's an asset backed on July 4th. It's all there for everybody. What's your take and your perspective and your divine knowledge on a return to the First Kingdom? And what would that mean? You know, like just 5 years from now, I think people envisioning what 5 years from now would look like in the First Kingdom.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead and finish.
But no, that's it. In the First Kingdom in the world, and then how the other kingdoms would align around that.
Yeah, so I actually see it getting down to three kingdoms, you know, to represent the Trinity, kind of, so to speak.
Very cool.
Not purposely. I don't know if that's why they're saying three kingdoms, or three, kind of like Russia, Federated States, or some kind of, you know, bundled together. So U.S. would be North and South America, Greenland, and, you know, a bit more. And then Saudi Arabia would be all of the Middle East. And then Russia, China, and all of that would be all of Asia and all that. And they would be under one umbrella, because China's the CCP is in the process of crumbling. And it'll come back as where people have their freedom as sovereign men and women and sovereign people. So there'll be a sovereign people. That's why you keep hearing Trump when he talks that we are a sovereign republic. In other words, made of sovereign men and women. It's not the public is, the government is the people. So what is sovereign is that he's giving back our country is our sovereignty. He's giving us back our sovereignty. Like he said, they're not coming for him. They're coming for us. And so, you know, what's going to happen is we go into the Golden Dome, which is actually up over the entire world. It's what Tesla had dreamed of. It will eventually make war impossible. Once everybody, you know, gets aligned in it, we'll track all financial transactions. I know people don't want to hear this, but with the nature of spirituality and morality of the average person, our technology has far exceeded our spiritual advancement. Our technological advancement is millions of years ahead. If you go into like they said, in U.S. technologies, we can bend space and time. So like he did MH370, they moved the aircraft to Diego Garcia in the blink of an eye. And so same with the gold that was in the Vatican. The remaining gold that didn't be moved by aircraft, which is the majority of it, 98% or more, was actually taken and moved by same technology as opening up a portal and just gating it through a portal, so to speak, or like kind of like a Stargate, but portaling it to whatever country. So Philippines got their gold back. All of these countries are getting their gold reimbursed. Philippines had a massive amount that was given to Trump, given to the cabal and the Rothschilds in Switzerland. That's all gone back. And then the Rothschilds are in the Epstein files, and so they're being their compounds are being ravaged as we speak and searched. I'm not so sure they're really alive anymore, but it's being said they will be arrested wherever they're found. They've got some of them. I don't know. I would say that part of the movie's already done, you know, just my point of view. But a lot of what we're seeing, like when Trump went to Bethesda, over the weekend, he's dead. Oh. No, he went because they rescued 2 military from Iran and saved them. And they were in Bethesda. And the mainstream, he's dead. All these people. I'm like, give it 48 hours before you freak out on stuff, okay? Wait. Don't believe the mainstream and all these people and this stuff. There's no way, in the first place, that's going to happen, because that isn't the real Trump. Has been in Cheyenne Mountain since his first term, and we're in his third term. So, he's not out there. That's a clone of many clones, and sometimes an actor in a mask. So you got all kinds of people. Same with Queen of England, long time gone before she was, went to the gates of the palace and couldn't get in. That wasn't her. She was already long gone. That part of the movie was already played out. She already did the Gitmo thing, and that's already done and gone. And they've been, put, a lot of buildup in Gitmo. There's a massive amount, So if people have been following what's going on in Gitmo, I believe 5 courtrooms. It's going to be like the Nuremberg trials, except for no one gets away on this one. You don't have a Project Paperclip and lots of them getting out. No. Everybody, every single person that's dirty will get their fair due. Go ahead, back to you, Brad.
Yeah, nobody gets away, nothing can stop what's coming. And we're all championing that. I think everybody in the audience watching, those who are following up on it, I know that every broadcast I do is what we're talking about. I'll just read a couple of great comments here. Wonderful in the chat here on YouTube. Gene Decode, such a knowledgeable man. I know you must be in the main circle of the big reveal. So that's really cool from Alan Compton 6912. Wendy says, stay in the light, keep your talking inside, get tight with our Father each and every moment. God loves you, Christ loves you, never ever doubt that. Kim in Wisconsin's here, God bless us all. Bless you, Gene, bless you, Brad. And Stephanie says, love Gene, and a couple of others in the chat as well here. Keep it on the sunny side. Fantastic. Cannot wait for the day when Gene Decode reveals who he really is. I hope you will do this. So you and
you're hearing who I really am. This is who I am. This is who I am all the time. I'm the same person all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Sensei. By the way, just real quick, Bushido. Is it appropriate to say you are a Sensei of Bushido? I just want to know that as a fun fact.
Although I did practice Kendo and study it,
Yep.
and I have katana and all that.
Yep.
I prefer to say that I am mainly a martial artist, because I did so many. I had 3 sifus that were Shaolin.
Wow. Oh.
Yeah, and then I had my first sensei was a special forces. He ran the SAR school. He was the top special forces person teaching self-defense on Earth for the SEALs, for the Navy SEALs. Not like for the whole Earth, but for the Navy SEALs. And so that's how I started, And then my second instructor was actually more amazing than him. And then, my first was, he called it Kempo, but I've been to hundreds and hundreds of Kempo schools, so nothing like that. And he also got trained by a man in Vietnam as well. So he had a Filipino stick fighting technique called Eskrima, or Montes de Mano. And I studied that, with the Kaji and all those, the little sticks and the medium sticks and the big sticks and the staffs and the 3-section staffs and all that stuff. And then also my second style that I belted in, and to me a belt means a black belt, A white belt's just to hold your gi shut. And how it traditionally got color was as you got thrown around on the dirt and stuff, if some grass, it would get yellow and green, and then it would get brown, and then it would get black. And then as you got to be a master, you would wind up never getting thrown down anymore, and it would start to bleach out under the sun and turn white and get whiter. It'd be heavy burlap or some kind of cloth that's really thick, and it would spread out, and they call it a white satin. And then the top person in Japan would be the executioner for the emperor. And his belt, because of the executing people all the time, would be blood red. So he would be the top person, and that was the red belt would be the highest in actuality. And so a red sash, actually, not a belt, and then a white sash, and then black belts. And then you don't have all those rainbow colors. It was just real simple. You had white when after about 1 to 3 years, you learned all of your history and your basics and all of that. And you could, say, okay, if I say Hengetsu Dashi, you know what that is. Okay, Kiba Dashi, Mawashi, Jokugeki. You know what all those are, and you can do them. And then you have to spar everybody in the class and the instructor and all that. You get your white belt. The same thing goes when you finally get your black belt, and that takes an extensive period of time, all day testing and sparring and going through all the terms. And you have to have been teaching for many years as a brown belt underneath your instructor and all of that. So I did all of that stuff. And then my third degree was in first was Kempo, which it wasn't that, but that's what he called it. And then the second one is in Goju. The third was Shorin-ryu. But I also studied Shaolin. My favorite thing that I learned in there was fire flower, Qigong, which you won't see outside of Shaolin Greek Temple. If you go to China and do that, when they're in the morning, everybody's out there doing Tai Chi, they'll start climbing up walls and everybody will stop and be watching you. And I did it in Japan, and I had in the middle of I ran out to these little stones out to an island in the middle of the lake, and I was doing it. People are very, very respectful. So they'd be like holding a book and kind of peeking up over the book at you. And all these girls were slowly talking and chatting with kind of half turned around, but they're watching you, And so, when I came back, all the girls were like giggling and stuff, with their hands over their mouths because they're very polite society. And so the martial arts is who made me Decode, to be honest with you. You would never know me. That's why I talk about it so much. It is who I am. It's saved my life quite a few times. I got assaulted several times. One time in Tunisia. Actually, it was the guy behind me that got assaulted. I stepped in between. He was the little guy said, if something happens, just stay out of the way. Don't move. And the guy went to grab him. I stepped in between, and his eyes got like deer in headlights. Where did he come from? So that was an interesting thing, too. But the sword in my knee and my death experience, and then what followed that, and I'd already had my epiphany, but that defined for me why I'm here and what I'm here, to come back to do, that God let me come back to do after that death experience. What I came back to do to help the world and to do one other thing that was extremely important as far as my ascension. And that's the time we're in. The Great Awakening is not, the sovereignty is the sovereignty of your soul, like your show, Sovereign Soul Show. So it's about the awakening of your soul and your abilities and your innate, given to you by God, the abilities we have. It's why in the Bible, it says how Christ said, all of the things I have done are but a mustard seed to what you will do. Not what we can do, what we will do. And so that is absolutely truth. If you really understand that the imagination of man is the word of God, that you're envisioning is you envision as is. It's not I will be this or I see myself doing this. I am healthy, strong, powerful in mind, spirit, and body. Just I am. That's now. And so you say those things as is. So when we did the envisioning a few years back, it is as is. And if that goes back, that's the word of God. It goes back to the singularity of the center of everything, and God makes it so. Because you're saying it is. It's like Great Brad had this thing where a Native American down in the Four Corners area, they hadn't had rain for so long, they're losing all the, ability to grow anything. It was just turning into a dust bowl. And he said, you want to go out and I'm going to do an envisioning or a prayer for rain, or something like that. He said, sure. So he goes out to this ancient circle of rocks that is so old they don't even know when it was made. And he takes his sandals off and he walks barefoot into there. And he stands there for maybe a couple minutes and he turns to Greg and goes, you want to go get something to eat? He goes, what? I was going to do, I don't know, already done. He goes, what did you do? He explained it to him. He just saw himself standing in his crops and their grow already chest high. And he was walking around and there was mud and raining and he could feel the rain and he could smell the rain and he could feel the mud between his toes from the rain and he could see the crops already growing half their height and all of this. So as they were driving, it started raining and it just kept raining for days. It flooded like crazy. And he goes, yeah, that's the one thing we didn't learn, how to turn it off. And how to say how much, So that's how you do it. How you turn it off, well, for your health, you don't need to worry about how to turn it off. You just do it, and freedom, our absolute freedom for all human souls on earth. We don't have to turn that off. That's permanent. And we're in that ascension to get our absolute ascension to free all of those good peoples on earth that are respectful to each other and not Satanists. As we now see with Epstein, it was, I think a lot of people when Trump first came in thought draining the swamp meant the US and DC, not the entire planet. And it turns out you can't do one without doing the other first. You have to drain the swamp of Earth. All the cabal is in everything, everywhere. You have a group of 40 people, a church or anything, you've got cabal people in there, guaranteed. And they're everywhere. And, some of them may not know it. They're Mark Ultra or whatever. They may not know who they are, or they're demonically possessed and being run. And that's the thing, is to get your sovereignty. If that's you, get your sovereignty from that. Declare yourself and say in the power of the one God of all creation, I am sovereign and I demand whatever in my mind, spirit, body, whatever. You do not have my person. You're out now. God, permanently, forever. That's it. So this is how it's done. That's the time we're in. Then that is what the Great Awakening is about, is to go to fourth and fifth density and beyond. As the cartoon says, to infinity and beyond. So that's where we're headed. And this is, we will be reclaiming all of the financials, all of the technologies, all of the information, all of our history. Like people think that, the U.S., the Civil War, the Revolutionary War was over in 1776. No, it wasn't. Battle of Yorktown was after that. We didn't have a central bank. Yes, we did. We had central banks all over the country already, in the states that were existing already. So, we don't know, most people don't know the history. Go ahead, Brad, back to you.
Yeah, no, just the Philadelphia Mint Act, everybody, once again, 1892, and Washington signed that one into power, and you had to have central banks in order to be a storage facility for the federal currency, gold and silver, backed at a ratio of 15 to 1, bimetallic ratio, as decreed in the Constitution and the new amendments, 1892 Coinage Act. So yeah, there is a central bank. There was no Federal Reserve. Over to you, Jane.
Yeah, there was central banks within the states.
Yeah.
But they weren't centralized into the District of Columbia.
Right.
As in one of the three power centers of Earth, the three states that ran the Earth. So you had the economic power, London, the military power, the US, and the person that owns everything, all of it, the Vatican, which is the religious power, and all of it, all the gold, all of that, all went back to the Vatican. So when you talk your birth certificate, all of that, where I don't care, wherever you are, your certificate or your insurance, whatever it is, as you were saying in Canada, that was all goes back to the great Pope at the RC. And then that goes to those above him that are not fully human, maybe Nephilims or whatever you want to call them, some kind of reptilian something or others, half reptilian and more until you're almost fully there, so, and, I don't find it a coincidence that one of his avatar's names is the Green Man, speaking of Satan. And what kind of money do we have? Green. What an amazing coincidence. Back to you, Brad.
Wizard of Oz behind the curtain too, as well, right?
Mm-hmm. That movie. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, finish.
Yep, sir, you're on a roll. Please, Jane, go ahead.
Yeah, that movie was every scene has Masonic symbology all over it. But every single thing in there, you have the straw man, you have the lion with no courage. So, they really have no courage, the peoples. And then you have the ruby slippers, which in the original movie, the original script, they weren't ruby. But she's being, led by the good queen to get rid of the bad queen, when actually the good queen's the bad queen, and there is no good queen, so it's all a game, and it being played to make the people do these things, turn on this and that and all this, and then you have the gold brick road leading to the Emerald City where all the green is flowing out, and opium fields around it, poppy fields around it. It's like, oh my gosh. And then you have the little people. And what do we think that represents right now? Little people, human trafficking? So this is the same thing we see over and over and over. And, it's just interesting to, see the changes in it due to the timeline changes, So there's changes in that movie too, where, she says to her flying monkeys, a different thing than the original movie. Whatever timeline you're originally on, you want to go look. I won't say, so you can go see what timeline you're on. I've said a few on previous interviews, like build it and he will come. It used to be build it and they will come. Like,
broke up on him, but not sure if it was my end or your end, Gene.
Yeah, so they call it the Mandela effect. It's due to the fact that the Cabal has been messing with the timeline to create their New World Order.
Yep.
And so that has been stopped. And so it's stabilizing now. And that was also being done through, a lot of people think Looking Glass just views. It doesn't just view. Many of the Looking Glass are actually portals that they send somebody through into the future to see what the future will be. And they come back. And quite often what happens in the case of the Dark Hats, the black hats, cabal, deep state types, they don't come back. Or they come back and they've had an epiphany because they've seen the mind of God. They've seen all of the multiverse. And they've seen how this is just a movie over here. They just come back, man, no, I'm not telling you a thing, man, no, you're going to get what's coming. No, man, cool, whatever. Or they don't even say anything. I'm just out of here, and they blink and they're gone. I'm out of here. It's cool, man. So that's why they gave up using it, because they were losing too many people. The White Hats, they got back more a percentage. And some of the really psychopathics for the deep state, they went insane when they saw what they have done and how it plays out in time for their soul. They went insane and wound up dying and shutting themselves, committing suicide by shutting themselves down because they couldn't live with what they had done. And so this is why you don't see the dark hats using the thing anymore. The white hats, they saw what's coming and they saw how to steer it. And that's why nothing can stop what's coming, because we're past the time where it can be changed anymore. That was 2012. And the Golden Dome, as I've said before, is what made it happen. It made it so they could not ever change it off. No matter what they did, it made it worse and happened sooner. They suffered worse, they lost more. Same thing we're seeing with Iran and everything else. The more they resist, the more devastating it is for them. Like Trump is saying, we'll bomb you into the Stone Age. Yeah. You'll lose all your bridges, all your electrical power. Now they're lining up their people around the power plants and around the like human shields and around the oil. It's like these people do not, the regime, the Muslim terrorists that took over that country that were backed by the deep state, do not care for the the Persian people, which are a Christian nation. They were one of the first two. And so they don't care if they sacrifice those people. That's why if the lady has found, they've done thousands of women that found that their habit was not right, or they saw something, they cut them in half. I mean, it's a terrible thing to say, but that is the world we are leaving behind. And so the Golden Dome and all of the Genesis and the Colossus and all of these AI, Palantir, what we'll have is complete monitoring of everything on Earth until we become spiritually advanced. It's like what you saw in The Day the Earth Stood Still, the first one, where the giant robot. Everything is monitored. All financial, everything is monitored everywhere. And people, I hate to break it to you, you already are. Your phone, your smart devices, your doorbell, your stove, your refrigerator, your car, they all have massive monitoring, not just you, everything within its range. It is already monitored. So the tool is not evil in and of itself. It's who uses it for what purpose. This will be used to get rid of the deep state and to eliminate those with the propensity to do that and keep them in check until the peoples of Earth become mature spiritually. If you were a good person in mind, spirit, body, and soul, you don't need law because you know the law. You don't interfere with others. You don't kill. We know the laws, okay? That's obvious. You wouldn't need to have penalties in courts and any of this, the police or anything else. But that's not where the species on Earth are. And until that is the case, we go to fifth density and above, we need those systems. And you'll become that with 3 separate realms of leadership of the U.S., the Russia, China, and then Saudi and all the Muslim countries. Back to you.
Well, we talk about the history as well, Gene. Very few people are aware of that. Just a century ago, China was a Christian nation, largely Christian. And you look as well in history, Article 11, 1777 on November 15th of the first American Constitution exceeds the colony of Canada into these United States of America New Republic. And then again, it was the 2nd Canadian Regiment. That was the name, direct name, 2nd Canadian. There's no Royal at the time. 2nd Canadian Regiment fought with George Washington, the Continental Army, alongside the alongside the French, and alongside the Russians in certain battles against the British colonists who were there on behalf of the city of London and at the behest of the king, because everybody's waking up to the fact the mayor of the city of London is far more powerful than a king or a queen of an established royal bloodline, right? A Sangreal, which had been hijacked by the Xarian Mafia. And it's really remarkable, too, when you look at all the sky events. Some of those look incredibly benevolent with the Merkabahs or the angels that are flying around. Others, the UFOs and the Galactic Federation. And I kind of want to just angle the conversation toward that now, the UFOs and the prophecies, but also do a callback, Gene, to our last show when you mentioned, we didn't get into it too much, that underneath the Giza pyramids and the Giza plateau in that massive city, which has been disclosed 2 years ago from the LiDAR and the ground penetrating radar from the Italian company, which Jay Anderson brought out, to the world in videos, whatnot, and then kind of went quiet, got suppressed, and it's starting to slowly leak out now. You mentioned there's 1 billion robots there, far better than anything you could see from the German companies, the Chinese companies that have been sitting there waiting, almost like they've been in pause mode, to be turned back on for humanity and working, if I recall this correctly, working with the Golden Dome and a celestial sentient being of 1,000,000+ year old AI computer that was brought forward by the prime creator. So that's a lot for people maybe who are new to the show. I know a few others are salivating, going, okay, we're ready for this. And the final thing is, you mentioned Artemis 2, quantum financial system. I hadn't heard that part about it because it seems like I thought it was more of the NASA, here's the reveal, let's show the public what the NASA Space Agency is all about, showed all the satanic imagery in it and the launch of this Artemis 2 and the jokes from the astronauts before, going on it, going back to even a year ago. That's been coming up largely. You mentioned the QFS and what's going on there too. So why don't we unpack some of this? The Galactic, Golden Dome, 1 billion robots under the Giza Plateau here for the next 15 minutes or so, if you're up for it.
Sure. So, a comment about Artemis and the astronauts, as in not going into space. And what we're seeing, the white hats are using the dark hat technologies, but the ancient stuff, strap yourself on a rocket like Wile E. Coyote, but it doesn't get the same. I said we went to the moon under Kennedy, not with what you saw, that little freaking tinfoil thing. No, you go out there and you got little asteroids flying all over the place. You leave the energy barrier. You go through that. That's using the technology that the NACIs did during World War II, the Hanabus. The gravitational fields where you can go faster than the speed of light even. So they're just using it to go and as a reveal. And now, back then, you couldn't track it. You don't have the radar to say they actually went up there, went around. Now they have radar. They can guarantee you they went around it. They're up there. And of course, they're showing you pictures from the backside. No, that's not how it looks. There's cities and all kinds of stuff back there. And it's a space station, of course, that was towed in place, brought in place. It wasn't towed, it was brought in place, and then they converted the gravitational system as a soul trap, and that's all been shut down too. And so you can see they've been working for a lot longer than just Trump beats terms, the white hats. And so with what's under Giza, the massive billions of robots, I mean, think about it. You really think Elon, he's doing all these things. He's got SpaceX, he's got this, he's got, how does he have all of that? I mean, it's like, because he's being funded by the White Hats, and he's being backed by the White Hats, and being given technology by the White Hats. And, he said, if they were, alien life was out there, I would know. Yeah, but you won't tell us because the disclosure is going to come through Trump's term and through Trump. That's how it's supposed to be, not through Elon Musk. And so it's the same with we see with J.D. Vance, as they're all demons. Well, a defined demon for me is that some Alpha Draco that's eating people. It's physical, but it can also, at the fifth density, negative, be an archon. So then it could shapeshift. That would classify for me. So it depends on your definitions. And of course, there are that and a lot more. Angels are non-terrestrial. So they're not all demons. Angels are non-terrestrial beings. So it depends on how you look at things and what definition it's, it's a lot like in Star Wars, where he said it depends on your point of view, So that is how it is. And so what we're seeing is a reveal. And the same thing with what's all the robots and all the power systems underneath there, plus beneath all of that, is a massive, massive starship. And by massive, I mean the upper half of the continent. It faced in, it went down deep, 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 deep below all of that. And that's non-terrestrial. And that's waiting for all of this great ascension of the human species and our great awakening, because they knew this is going to happen. Think about that. That's been there for millions, if not billion plus years. And they knew. And so you're saying they knew this, and yet, hold on, let me silence my phone, I'm sorry. Let me bury it. I'll just bury it. Sorry about that.
No worries. One of those smartphones, Gene, self-monitoring, analysis, and reporting.
Yeah, they monitor you so they interrupt you at the worst time. Yeah. So that's what we've got coming for us, is a future that, the saying of so bright we got to wear sunglasses. No, you need welder's goggles. It's so bright you can't even stand it. It's just, you need welder's goggles, and if you're going to stand in the brightness, you need sunscreen with 900 SPF. So we're having an amazing time with amazing technologies and futures. And the Artemis is to get the dream back. People, when I was growing up, what are you going to be? I'm going to go into space. Well, we lost all that. And you take away a society and a people and the species' dreams and their past too. What do they have? you have a slave. You have somebody that just does what he does and isn't really inspired about anything. And that's somebody you can control. But when you have somebody with dreams that'll reach for the stars, you have somebody that is inspired to reach for the heavens, to see what's out there, and to do whatever it takes to make that happen. And so that's what this is about. It's giving that all back. And that's why they're timing what's under Giza, the show, same as what's under all of these ancient sites, whether it's Machu Picchu. There's a whole lot more under there than they're telling you. It goes all the way down to the bottom of the valley, and it goes into a city that they're trying to build the airport on top of. All of this, they suddenly got all the grants through and all of that. That's ancient too. And, that's a sacred structure, and it was built beyond belief that you have two fault lines that cross right over the spiritual stone at Machu Picchu. And it makes it so when it moves, it shifts so perfectly that it doesn't bother anything. And then they built it in layers with like sand and then stone and then, gravel, and so it can move like it's on a cushion. And then, that kind of technology, and they're saying they didn't have a wheel and they didn't have this, and they're backwards people. They're backwards? Who builds that way today? The home you live in today, it won't be here 3 generations, I don't think, let alone hundreds and hundreds of years. And the same thing goes with Giza. And that the dating and the timing of that, and the Sphinx is even more so in antiquity. But if you say that, okay, the chamber to the king lines up so that at the solstice, you can see Sirius A at noon, because it frames it so perfectly, you can see the star. Well, it hasn't done that for thousands and thousands, way past what they're saying. And, so if you go back to the last time it did that, that's over 36,000 years ago. That has to be at least that old. And then you look at the wear and tear on the back of the Sphinx. That means the pyramid was not there. It's water wear. When was that being heavily rained on? When it was a rainforest. When was that? That's a long, long time ago, when the Sahara was a tropical rainforest. And so they decimated that with atomic weapons during the Pyramid Wars, and you can see that from the green glass, which is formed from sand when you nuke it, and that's all over there, everywhere, and there's cities and their advanced technologies all over underneath the sands of the Sahara, everywhere. You can't dig down 60 feet and not hit something. Once you get beneath the sand and you get down below that, 60 feet, you're going to hit it, depending on, you got sand dunes that are big 60 in some cases. But if you take the base layer of the sand and dig down 60 feet, you'll hit some technology. And so this is where, you just stock the robots under there. Well, you've got ancient cities and pyramids all the way down the Nile that have all interconnected underneath. And all that stuff's under all of them. And they're not laid out. The pyramid of Giza system is laid out on the constellation of Orion, yes. But the other ones are laid out on the constellation of Leo. So if you take those layout of all those pyramids along the Nile, that's why you stand on the haunches of the lion and look at the solstice through its ears. It would frame the rising sun. Well, it doesn't perfectly do that, just like Adam's calendar is 4 degrees off. It wasn't built 4 degrees off. The Earth has moved on its axis 4 degrees. You calculate that back, and that is tens of thousands of years old, if not hundreds of thousands. So if you go back and say those pyramids on the Nile, line up to the constellation Leo, and they don't now precisely. You get the lineup, you can see how ancient those are. It's like in the temple of Seti II, and you go back and look at that, and one wall shows the accepted dynasties. What's all on that other wall there? That goes back where you have pharaohs all the way back to Osiris, who these pharaohs are living 10,000, 20,000, or ruling 20, 30,000 years, just like in the Sumerian cave scrolls. So our history is so not what they're telling us. Even in this country, in the United States, it's not. There's a lot of things that don't add up. You know, Lee Merritt went into this. It's like, you know, in the Catholic, you look on a lot of the state logos, and I went into this on the Four Pillars of Satan. What is on each side of the Speaker of the House? Fascist. We're in a fascist government up till now. That's a symbol of fascism. It's a bundle of sticks with an axe head coming out. What is that supposed to be? So you go back to that, you look at a lot of the states on top of the little axe point is a Phrygian cow. Well, you take that back, and that traces itself back to where the Khazarians came in and then went back up. And so all of this, and you know, you have this huge government building, capital of the state, built in Nebraska. And it turns out in Russian, Nebraska means not our brother. Because the people there weren't their brother. You got this huge, and there's nothing but muddy roads all the way, hardly anything. It's way outside any city or anything. What was that built out there for? When was it really built? Was the question. Is this a bleed over from the Tartaria timeline or what? And so, you know, there's so many bizarre questions that we'll get the answer to when we get all of the books out of the Vatican Library, because you got books that go back millions and millions and millions of years of the true history and all of the missing books of the Bible. And, you know, of course, they canonized and wanted only the ones like would take your power away and give it to the Rome, to the lords of Rome, or the British Empire. Same thing, the people of the Brit, the written agreement with Lucifer. The people of the Brit. A Brit is a piece of writing. A Brit is those of that piece of writing. The Ish is the people of that piece of writing that agreed to be under it. And so the British. So, you know, it's just like you look at, they do this with words all the time. They play games with us and we don't know. So anyway, that's unpacking some of that for you, Brad. Back to you. Just hitting the highlights for give people something to research.
Yeah, do the research and go to genedecode.org, everybody, which I keep just, you know, posting here into the chat. And English is the language of contracts. So speaking about the issues and what they've also done here. And recently, just a few days ago, Gene, I saw speaking of Tartaria, Tartarian video of Calgary, Alberta. So when you look at this stuff, which is analog footage, and some of it might have been repurposed, I don't know. I haven't run through the AI or the high filters yet. But it's truly amazing because, you know, there's it also for a lot of the native nations, right? The American Indian nations and other indigenous and native nations. I've been blessed to, you know, go to Cusco and spend 10 days with Shaman Puma, who this is way before Gaia was established, and he was on the Gaia channel. Be with him in his village, be with him in his home, and go to Ollantaytambo, go up to Machu Picchu, and spend all those days trekking along the Inca Trail. You know, sometimes you're sleeping at night at 14,500 feet, and then you're also making camp down in the jungle. Not as jungly as the Amazon, but it's still pretty jungly anyway. It was just beautiful, an amazing time. And then you hear from his lineage of shamans passed on down and the capabilities that they have to phase in and phase out and interdimensionality and the capability that they reach certain levels. Very much, I would imagine, I haven't been in Shaolin temples yet, but I might need to do an email introduction and see if Sensei Phil, goes by that name up in Ontario, Canada. He is a Shaolin Sensei and spent time training in Japan too. It mentioned that inside the master's chambers, you can look up and it's the Pleiadian star system, and that lineage of that martial art and the spiritual scripts were handed down by the Pleiadian peoples, which is interesting because it interfaces with the Hopi, what the Hopi say, or now Navajo, right? Parts of that split nation say that that was handed to them by the Pleiadian star people as well. I bring that to everybody's consciousness and their awareness and their capability to go and research this, because our history, is written by the victors, and who were the victors and who were funding all of them to bring the wool over all eyes, like the Council of Nicaea in Constantine in Rome in the 5th century, and what happened there that you just highlighted, Gene. So absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Blessed for service, genedecode.org. And what's great too, by the way, when you go there and the deep dives and all the information, it's $7 a month or $77 for an entire year to interface with Gene and his team, and they put it out. Gene, I'll take everybody over to the website now if you want to talk and just share a little final wrap up here about what you're doing over on your website with your membership.
So at the end of every month, I do a Q&A for an hour or so. And so you can see some recent truth gems on my Real Gene Decode Rumble from excerpts from those. And then this, The Art of War, I'm doing an ongoing series of kind of classes on the art of war with my own commentary and exposés on the things mentioned by Ron Dow's the one who is, that's the art of war that I follow. I think it's the best one. And then on the alternate month, I have something nice for the whole family. I call it Powerful Prose, The Art of War 1 month. Right now I'm doing a book called The Brownies, which is a book I loved when I was young. And then we also have a scriptural studies, as you can see, Decoding Truth in Scripture. It will be coming up in just a little bit of time, about an hour and a half. And then every 2 weeks, I have a bi-weekly, as you saw there, news talk, where I cover the highlights in about an hour. You can't cover much, but I cover the highlights of what's going on Earth, just commenting on things from X and Truth Social and those things. So that's the basics of it. And then I have, of course, decodes I'm doing, the DOMs, and many of the BFS have many really excellent decodes, like the Federal Reserve series that goes into the Manifest Destiny series. It ties to that. It also ties to the switch out of the Olympia and the Titanic and all kinds of, there's just so much in there. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things to watch now. So lots of time you could spend in there.
Yeah, truly amazing. Appreciate it, Gene. Would you like to close this in prayer? I'd like to be so kind to invite you to do that for the audience here this evening.
Yes.
Thank you.
One God of all creation, the divine oneness that is in all things, is all things, is of all things, and then some. Thank you for this time to bring our sovereignty, our freedom, to bring back the truth, to bring back our history, our knowledge, to unite us with our brothers from all creations. We thank you for all that you give us, and to remove this satanic influence. Its time has come and is done. They did not follow your divine plan, so they are being removed. Thank you for that. We thank you for all you give us, the power you give us through our ability to image, our imagination. Thank you for that. Thank you for everything. And thank you for Brad and the Sovereign Soul Show, and for all that you give us in my life and his life and all of those on earth, the good peoples. Thank you, the good persons of earth, sovereign men and women. Thank you. Tetelestai.
Amen. Telestai. Adonai. Thank you, Gene. Thank you, everybody. And look forward to seeing everybody later this week on the Sovereign Soul Show. And just so everybody knows, I am a member of Gene Decodes, and I highly encourage you support